there was that guy in my circle of friends who's just like the go-to gun guy in any group. Super cool guy, got along with him great, one of my best friends from trade school. And I'm talking to him one day. He's like, look, you gotta think of it this way. I have never once ever spent more money for the premium version of a gun with a better finish, better sights, whatever, and regretted it. Ever. Has never happened. And this, in my experience, carries over directly to tools as well. Now there are some mainly big ticket items where it's just not really possible or feasible to get the higher quality versions of things because the Chinese one costs literally 1/6 as much and it still gets the job done. But in a lot of cases, this isn't really the case. So here's an example. I'm working on this old tractor over here and it's got these really nasty studs coming out the front of it. It's like, all right, we gotta yank these out and put something better in. And so I grab it with the old stud puller there and I break it loose. But it's not, really loose. It's not really loose enough to come out yet. And due to this being on the front of the engine, there's that timing gear cover there, so I can't really get a very good, a very large percentage of a turn with this thing. So you can see it's a fairly bulky tool. And of course, these smaller pliers aren't gonna pull it out yet. So I go over to the toolbox and get these larger pliers. Now these are not cheap pliers. These are the KNIPEX made in Germany, whatever these are called, like the Cobra series or whatever, at least that's what they call the smaller ones. And they are very, very nice. In fact, in my opinion, these are the nicest pliers of this style that money can buy. I've never used anything better. The American-made channel lock stuff is very good as well, but I think these are superior. And this was a buy once, cry once tool. This thing, you can see it has not been used very much. You can compare the grips there. They're definitely a lot cleaner. But it's one of those things for when you need it, you really need it, and sure enough, I bit down with these. I put the stud right about in there, and it got them loose. I did that a bunch of times until I could easily remove them with these smaller pliers. And I was thinking, these, like I said, they were not a cheap tool, but when I went to grab that thing, it worked like a charm, and everything, like I've used cheaper tongue and groove style pliers where like the grooves slip against each other, then the pliers collapse on your hand, then it hurts a lot, or else the teeth are not very sharp on them, or the jaws rather, I guess a better way to say. The jaws are not made of very hard material, so it gets deformed going against stuff. As you can see, even after biting into these studs, which are probably grade 5s at least, they are still razor sharp. It actually kind of hurts to move my finger along the edge of that. They're that sharp. And it did the job perfectly. Now, here's the lesson with these. I don't know what the El Cheapo version of this costs. What are these things, 36 inches about? No, they're just under 2 feet long. I bet I can find a pretty cheap set of these online for maybe $30, $40. When I bought these, I think the American-made channel locks version was like 60 or 80 or something. I think I paid like $90 or $100 for this. So, is it more expensive than the El Cheapos? Yes. But as opposed to getting a set which is, in my limited experience with those cheaper tongue and groove pliers, prone to slipping and being loosey-goosey and wearing out, and as I said, having the teeth on them deformed, for roughly $60 more, I got premium German quality, and it's about the best you can get. Did it hurt to spend that and buy these? Yeah, a little bit. It's like, man, it's pretty expensive for a pair of pliers. I'm probably not going to use all that much, say that 10 times fast. But today, like I said, they were literally the tool for the job. I just pulled them off the shelf. It was ready to go. And do I regret spending that $60 probably 1 to 3 years ago? I don't really remember how long I've had these. 1 to 3 years ago? No. Would my life be really any different if I had not spent that extra? And 60 bucks, I know, like, especially for a lot of people, that is a pretty good chunk. But this, as you can see, these are 2 foot long pliers. These are, as far as common stuff goes, pretty large hand tools. But you look at the smaller ones, these are like, 20 or 30 bucks more than the other ones. Okay, you know what? Here, I'll say it like this. Do I regret spending the $20 or $30 more on these than the cheap ones? No, I don't. I love these things. I'm very glad that I have them. And if my shop were abducted by aliens or whatever, I would definitely buy these again. No regrets whatsoever. And like I said, so anyway, where I'm going with this is when I go to consider purchasing the more premium version of something or the nicer version of something, provided it's something that I can afford, I ask myself, is my life really going to be any different if I don't spend that extra $20 on that tool, or even the extra $60 on these giant pliers or whatever? And the answer's, over a period of time, no, my life is no different today than it would be if I hadn't spent the extra $20 or $30 on these. And I feel like this mentality is pretty helpful because it is like, you know, it's like we say, buy once, cry once. It can be a little painful to buy the premium versions of things, especially at first, but once you have them and you use them and they just plain work and they just plain last, and like, these are pretty nice every time I use them, it is 100% worth it. So, like I said, Grandpa was right about everything. It just took me a while to find out, and buy once, cry once is definitely a thing. Now, I know that for a lot of people, it's just not feasible to spend that extra, you know, 20, 30 bucks or whatever on that, you know, for a lot of people in a lot of situations, but the reality is, for most people it is. We live in a society where pretty much everybody has a smartphone, which was probably like $200 to $600 or $800 when it was new. Everybody has a data plan for it. Most people eat out multiple times a week, and if I had to guess, I'd say probably at least half of society drives a fairly nice vehicle that was made within the last 5 to 10 years. With these things in mind, if you really want to make it a priority to spend the extra $20 or $30 on the premium tool, you can probably do it. Now, like I said, there are exceptions to this rule, people just starting out, you know, retired folks, folks trying to support a family on, you know, retail work or whatever. But for most people, you can do this. And for most people, when they say this is too expensive, I can never afford that, I don't really have any sympathy, because when I was in high school, I used to work for $8 an hour at Tractor Supply, and I scrapped metal on the weekends. Still bought my very own Hypertherm. That was my first plasma cutter ever. I paid full retail for it. And like pretty much just loads and loads of stuff that you see around here. But I was disciplined and I was willing to wait for stuff, and it wasn't always easy, but I have no regrets about, like I said, any time I've ever bought the premium version of something, ever. Unless I'm forgetting about something. Maybe there was a time when I'm like, you don't really get what you pay for here, but I honestly cannot think of one single time I've ever bought the premium version of something and wished I hadn't.